Hey, what's up, YouTube? Thank you for joining us. We're going to start this episode with a quick sound bite from Clint Spiegel, our guest. We'll see you in just a minute.
When I was on this cliff face last night riding bikes at midnight with this really cool group of friends that are really tough and able to do these amazing rides, I almost say it every night ride. I said, 51 years old, if I could have imagined my life, my wildest dream, what would I be doing at 51 years old? No way would have I predicted that I would be doing this.
Welcome to Making It in Asheville, a podcast where you get to hear the stories behind some of your favorite artists and businesses in town. Each episode, we interview a different local Ashevillean, we uncover their story, we find out how they're making it in Asheville, and try to provide you with actionable insights and lessons from each conversation that you can then apply to your own life and business.
And we are your guests. That was Sarah. We are your hosts.
We're also
That was Sarah, and I am Tony. And we're a husband and wife team that moved to Asheville in May of 2019. At the time, we really didn't know how we were going to make it in Asheville, so we decided to start a podcast where we would interview people who, by our definition, are making it in Asheville. And almost a year later, we've absolutely loved the process, got to meet some incredible people like today's guest, Clint Spiegel. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Yeah, in case you're wondering how we ourselves are making it in Asheville, Tony and I started our own marketing business when we moved here. It's called Making It Creative. We work with passionate business owners here in town and all over the country to help them develop more meaningful storytelling and more targeted marketing strategies to grow and more effectively convert their audience into customers.
And it has been an absolute blast. What a crazy 1 year in Asheville. We are thankful for you, listener, for participating in whatever this has become. And I honestly can't get over the amount or the quality of people that we've had opportunities to have conversation with, like Clint Spiegel. So this episode is gigantic, I think, for me, for us, in so much as we've talked to some really, I think, inspiring entrepreneurs and some really amazing brand builders, some folks who are early in a process, late in the process. This particular story seems somehow different from all of the other ones so far, in so much as like Clint kind of embodies this serial entrepreneur, tinkerer, mad, like Tony Stark, mad scientist, engineer who's able to build literally anything that he's like dreamt of. And that has been both a gift and a curse over the years. And now he's in this really, really sweet spot. And I think that his ability to tell the story was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, because I think unless you're really in the cycling world, you might not have heard of his business, which is Industry 9. They build these really cool custom cycling components. They're some of the best in the world. Some of the best cyclists use their components to build their bikes. So it's a massive business. They've got over, I think, 90 employees, he said. So it's one of the largest businesses in Asheville. I think.
And so, I mean, and that's not a factual statement, but it is pretty accurate. And part of the story is that it's called Industry 9 because there were 8 industries that failed before he built this. And so also this Industry 9 is kind of drafting off of a pretty way less sexy industrial machining business that his dad started 50 years ago. And so as part of their innovation strategy has been Clint in some way or another has been allocating time and attention and resources into startup ideas. And you can hear him tell the stories of most of them with heartbreaking detail about how they failed in this way or failed in that way or too early or whatever the issues were. And then finally hit a sweet spot. And I love how we were able to kind of unearth reasons or guesses, let's say, for why Industry 9 has been successful where the other ones weren't.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic episode For anyone who's kind of looking to learn more about how to keep your edge, how to keep innovating, how to stay fresh in an industry that maybe you have a lot of competitors or things are evolving very, very quickly. That's kind of his superpower, I think. And he outlines sort of some of the things that he's done in order to maintain that edge in the industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could attempt to try and capture what he told us relatively eloquently in our episode together. But instead, let's just hop in. And one thing I'll say is that we are for this episode, in like a fully live working gigantic factory. And there's only like a kind of minor hum in the background, probably indistinguishable based on your headphones or how you're listening. But I loved it. It felt, I don't know, the hum was electrifying for me, and I'm excited to share this episode. So without further ado, episode 46 with Clint Spiegel, founder of Industry 9. Enjoy. Yeah. So then, where did you start? How did you get your start with mountain bikes, and which I guess came first? So we are in a gigantic facility by our accounts. What kind of square footage? And then I'll ask about the bikes. I'm sorry. So like all in, would you say?
I would say between all of our buildings, I think it's about 70,000 square feet, something like that.
Wow. We had like 700 in maybe in. I don't even know that that's true. We had like 100 square feet in New York for a moment, 200 maybe. So that's like incalculable is the scale of what's going on here. And I'm wondering, some of this, not all of this, is used for bike part manufacturing. What came first, the passion for bikes or the realization that you can make wheels better than anyone?
Well, I mean, how I started, or how it all started, was my father actually started the machine shop when I was born. He started with one machine, one employee. Actually, one of his first employees was my mother, and I learned to walk on our first building is across the street, and they cordoned off a little corner of the shop, put me in the walker while they worked, and I learned how to walk, running around. But, it wasn't a lot of my life. But about 5, my dad started bringing me into work, just on Saturday and hanging out with him. And that's how I got kind of my start with that. But the machine shop was doing contract manufacturing. So you make parts for all kinds of industries. Might be automotive, military, communications, just anything you can really think about. But most of my life, I probably would accuse myself of being kind of dumb in that I was just so career focused, and my family had this amazing work kind of ethic all the time. So I really didn't have hobbies. Yeah. So I was very involved in the business. By 16, I knew I was going to do it as a career. But one of the problems with this business, because it's contract work, you are subject to getting an account and then them leaving and, find it at another factory for 10 cents cheaper, or even worse, that really happened big time in the 90s, send it to China. And it continues. And so most contract manufacturers, their dream is to start their own product line so they can control their own manufacturing.
Perfect.
Yeah. At any rate, so as a result, when I got out of college, or actually during college, we started our first business, and our new business that was our own product line. And then as soon as I got out of college, and this is what exposed me to the bike world at first, is we got the account to make parts for RockShox. And RockShox is one of the major suspension companies for mountain bikes. And I wasn't a cyclist at the time, but it was such a major piece of business for us that I would go out and ride with the guys at RockShox. And I did it mainly for business relationships. Again, I was kind of against having a hobby, just focus on work. And we did that for 2 or 3 years, and RockShox moved out to California. The company that remained was called renamed themselves to Ken Creek, which you guys have probably heard of here in town. And they actually came to me to develop a hub. And I spent a couple of years working with them to develop a hub, ultimately failed, spent 2 years, about $250,000, and just had to basically throw it away. They killed the project, and I was pretty much out of the bike world for about 10 years. Fast forward, this was in my early 20s, now fast forward to about my mid-30s, and I'm making the realization that my kind of life-work balance is way out of whack. I'm getting out of shape. I know I need to do something. And so I start cycling hard. And as I start cycling, I start thinking of all the ideas that I'd worked with 10 years earlier and trying to make it work. And then over a couple of years, just because you own a machine shop, you prototype any of your ideas and then develop some good things. And that's what ultimately launched Industry 9. So I definitely came at it industrially. My background was industrial, and then I found a passion, and then I was able to apply my manufacturing knowledge to my passion for recreation. So
I want to go back for a moment because you said you've been here your whole life basically. Was there ever a moment when you did not want to work for this company or be in this industry at all?
Well, as a kid, I had not really planned necessarily to make it my career. Actually, at about 16, my plan was to be a geneticist. I'm a weird kid. At 5 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to be, and it was a pirate. And because I build things, I actually went and tried to build a pirate ship on this little pond. My family had a little farm going as well as the machine shop. They raised horses. And so I did that. And then a year later, like a lot of kids, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And so, dug bones anywhere I could and, just ridiculous kid stuff. But I kind of always had this real passion for career. And but at 16, actually, my father's business was really growing at this point, and it was getting more exciting. He started out with machinery that were not as advanced, and then in the mid 80s, the computer-controlled machines, CNC machines, really started coming alive. He was an early adopter. And so the business really grew. It started looking a lot more exciting. And, because I was always kind of an inventive type, he was like, this is, would be a good opportunity for you to use as your career.
Yeah.
You should really consider it. And so I, for that year, I said, all right, I'm going to throw myself full force into thinking about this for a career. And I was ridiculous. My summer of my 16-year-old life, I probably worked 90 hours a week in the summer, and just insane and stupid. But I have a lot of energy, so it wasn't that hard, and really fell in love with it. But the plan was always to take that business and then develop new product lines. And Industry 9 is called Industry 9 because it was actually the 9th company that I either partnered in or started or partnered in. And most of them were failures. There was a few that were, maybe 2 or 3 that were pretty successful, but most of them were failures until Industry 9. And it was, definitely the best one that we started. And then at one point I was probably running 5 companies at a time. And when Industry 9 really showed that it was gonna had a good potential for growth, I shut the other ones down and then focused on the machine shop and Industry 9. So that's how that part happened.
Wow. What were some of the other companies that you started, if you want to share?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm glad to share it. I might go into a moment of PTSD. There were some traumatic experiences in my life. One of the first ones, my college degree was computer science. And I worked with one of my buddies to develop software that did remote monitoring of how your factory was running. So this was, before this was very common place as it is today, but we built a system that you can connect your machine tools, and then people from home, like the plant manager, could watch how the factory was running, reassign people to increase efficiencies and stuff like that. Spent a couple of years of my life developing that and sold precisely 0 of those. So that was a good crushing defeat. And then went into wire EDM tooling. That was that machine that cuts electricity that I showed you earlier. And got pretty much crushed out of the marketplace by a heavy-duty competitor on that one. Went into high-end tactical knives. That was at least a success. And we made a lot of knives that police departments and military people, police officers really, really loved. And that was the first time that I'd really made a product that really played to somebody's passion, really important how it looked, how it functioned. And it was their hobby. The police officers and stuff and the military people used it as a tool, but a lot of the people you sold it to might be hunters or just, people who love knives. And that was fun, and that was good, and it was a big help to starting Industry 9. But we were partners in that business, and though I hate to sell businesses, our partners kind of forced the sale, so we were out of that. Another one was high-end packaging machinery. We made machinery that makes the stand-up pouches that you might see like Capri Sun or whatever, those things. So it was the machines that made those pouches. And it was really cool things. The machines were, I think we sold them for about $1.5 million. It was really tightly integrated electronics and servo motors and really advanced math. We made incredible machines. The only problem is it cost us about $1.75 million to make a machine that we sold for $1.5 million. So not very lucrative there, and soon went out of business. We've never declared bankruptcy, but just became clear that they weren't going to make it and decided to have to shut down. But we were partners in that business too, so that was kind of forced. Industrial robotics, I designed a line of robots for loading machine tools, and then went around the country doing factory automation. And though that was really intellectually stimulating, it was the absolute worst business I have ever been in, just because you were just dealing with very unpleasant human beings. The prospect of this automation was, they wanted to fire 20 of their people and automate their factory, and there was always threats of lawsuits, and it was just nasty people. So I really, really hated that aspect of the business. Intellectually, it was really, really fun. I don't know how many I've counted here so far, but that gives you a decent little overview. Yeah.
So as not to overly simplify, but if you could attempt to identify the differences between the ones that failed and got shut down by partners, let's say, or that you shut down, and Industry 9, right? Like, what about it made it Goldilocks, where it was just right? You have passionate customers who are, willing to spend on a premium product. You have the tools in the backyard. Like, what about it do you think made it work, or is making it work? Current tense.
Yeah. Well, we could probably write a book about that, but, some overviews of it, like the robotics business, we can talk about some aspects of that. Let's call that like starting a car company. We've seen Elon Musk be able to pull off Tesla, but he started with many, many millions of dollars, and even that was stacked against him because of the entrenched competition and just how big a business that was. And the robotics, though it's not nearly as big as that, these people that are buying these robotic systems are investing many hundreds of thousands of dollars into their systems. So being a startup creates issues with that, and because it is strictly a monetary decision, meaning you'll invest a certain amount in your factory, and then you look at your return, and then also the longevity of the equipment, the ability to services and stuff like that. People will, it's a tough decision, and they'll often pragmatically make the decision that, no, we're going to go with a bigger company. The bicycle world, when we started Industry 9, one of the early things we dealt with as we build up our market share is there was definitely early adopters. And the bicycle world is wonderful. It's kind of like a lot of renegade, rebel-type people in the bicycle world. And when they see a small upstart, they're very willing to give it a try. But a lot of people, you know, like the first wheels we sold were $1,000 for a set of wheels. And, you know, this was like 14 years ago, I guess. And, it's a lot of money. And, you know, a bearing might go out or a spoke might need to be repaired. And if they think your company won't last more than a couple of years, which the bicycle world is full of that, they don't want to invest the money. And so it took us a couple of years of being in business before more and more people started buying it. But it was really nice to have those early adopters and people that were willing to risk that. And it was just the culture of the bicycle world. But in the industrial world, you don't have that culture. So that was one of the big things that was associated with it. Some of the other businesses, I don't know, you're young, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of creativity, but, you know, maybe you don't do the marketing quite right, or you, make certain mistakes that you later see as mistakes. You maybe don't see them at the first. But I think more than anything, what the real key of the ingredient with Industry 9 was the passion that went into it. Though I loved building my machines, I loved building the robots, there was still something that wasn't quite as reach down into your soul as cycling is, and being able to make something that you're so passionate about. Just kind of, honestly, my world is 100% surrounded by bicycles now. My friends are cyclists. My hobby outside of work is cycling. I come into work and I'm making bike parts. And so it just gives you this incredible mixture of passion and creativity that, creates a really, really great product. And, you're competing with 7 billion, 8 billion almost people on this planet. So if you're going to sell a product or if you're going to develop a brand, you've got to do it really, really well, or you're going to fail. And so I think just adding the passion and the abilities, but, obviously my whole background as a kid led up to being really good at being able to make something like this. So.
And for context, how long has I9 been in business?
So Industry 9 has been in business for about 14 years. We probably started developing our first prototypes about 16 years ago. But the machine shop, Turnamics, has been in existence for 50. Actually, this year was our 50th anniversary.
Wow. So. And so you were running all those other businesses while this was going, and I'm saying this, and pointing behind me by that. And
my father continues to be involved, so he's always taken primary responsibility for the machine shop, and I've taken the primary responsibility for starting the new businesses or the designs and creation, stuff like that. So
awesome. I got to meet him while you both were on your factory tour.
Oh, nice.
So he popped in. He seems like salt of the earth, like hard worker, exactly what you kind of said your childhood was like. I'm wondering, he still works in the business today, and
he's 75 years old and pretty much
he doesn't look 75.
Yeah, he's got a lot of energy himself. So I don't know if I would consider my father salt of the earth.
No,
but he is brilliant, energetic, driven, and he still works full time for a regular person, 40 hours a week or something like that. Yeah. But, most of his life, when he was young, when I was a kid, he would come, he'd probably work 60, 70 hours a week here. And then, like I said, a little side business that my mom had was raising horses. Wow. Then he'd come home and get on a tractor and plow a field until midnight or something like that. So, he just
worked.
Just goes.
Wow. We can see where your work ethic comes from then.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is the work ethic. Part of it is, you get lucky.
Yeah.
Some people are born tall. Some people are born smart. not so smart, full of energy, not so much energy. We have a good hard line of intense energy and,
yeah, I like
keep going.
I like to say that what I lack in skill, I try to make up for with enthusiasm. And so I'm wondering, as you were kind of talking through this, there's like this, luck and skill. It's hard to know. It's with hindsight, sometimes maybe it's easier. I'm wondering, outside of just like doggedness and determination and putting in more hours, are there any things that stand out as like important leadership lessons, business owning lessons, concepts outside of outwork everybody?
Well, when you outwork everybody, you make all kinds of mistakes and you learn lessons as a result of it. It's just like number of hours living. If you could magically live to 200, you're going to know a lot more. But also some of it was just hard lessons to work less hard. Having a machine shop when you have a lot of energy and a creative mind is dangerous. You just are constantly, you have a new idea and you work on too many things and you don't have focus some of the times. Actually, the amount of time I worked when I started Industry 9 was probably 40% less than I worked when I was starting all the other companies in my 20s and early 30s, and it worked a lot better. Luck does have something to do with it. You fail, and you think of a new idea, you refine how you're doing it, and you have a little bit better chance of pulling something off at each time. But, it's unclear. It's interesting, too. I've working in a machine shop all my life. I've seen inventors come by to have parts made, and it's interesting. Inventors, it's their baby, their ideas, their baby. And have you ever noticed, y'all don't have kids, right? Have you ever noticed how every parent, their little baby is the most beautiful genius that has ever existed? Well, unfortunately, every baby isn't a genius and beautiful, but the parent thinks that. And so as an inventor, you think that as well. And you start noticing that there are people that are so excited about their ideas, and you see their ideas and you're like, that is a horrible idea. So part of it is I've always tried to relentlessly focus my thought process to, reality based, get out of your own head and see what the world is valuing and your product and how it is accepted. And all of it is just, every single day, every single hour, you refine those decisions, and you like to think you finally figure it out, but part of it is that, and part of it you get little periods of time in your life where you get lucky and everything works. I'm definitely in that period of my life right now. I don't necessarily expect it to last. I hope it does, but we will soon see.
Wow. So we have a metaphor that has come up for us where same idea of the baby that everyone thinks is beautiful. We have a fear that this thing, which is our baby, is actually the ugly baby. And, I find that a lot of early on entrepreneurs or people who are, freelancing or trying to start some sort of service business, their own vision of the baby that they're building sees only the flaws, sees only, like when I hear myself speak, I only hear my filler words. I only hear the amount of times that I stutter. And I don't hear the good that comes out of it. And so it's funny that it's a similar. Is that you? Okay. It's a similar metaphor, except when you think that you have this like revolutionary idea and you're trying to create it and make it a reality, there's a harsh difference between the beauty of the baby in your head and like, will a customer buy it? And so it seems that where if I'm going to try and put words to it, the magic that's happened in Industry 9 is that it's a passion that you have and have had. It gave you excitement, and that is its own special sauce. But then there's also, customers who are willing to take chance because it's an industry that has consumers and maybe not businesses that are as pragmatic, right? One of the reasons why I have friends that say that they left real estate, residential real estate, it's because it's too emotional, and you want to sell commercial because it's pragmatic and businesses make business decisions. So selling to a customer might be a good step if it's inherently a little bit riskier. It's a startup. I'm wondering, that's a windy way of saying, I'm wondering, when you were making those initial sales, those initial products, right? It's one thing to scratch your own itch. It's one thing to have the tools to be able to develop the, invention that you have, let's say. It's another thing to get it in front of a customer and have them buy it. Were your first customers bike manufacturers, like wholesale accounts, or were you selling direct to consumer in those early days?
Well, we definitely started as direct to consumer. It's actually been recently that we've moved more into the OEM business, selling directly to the bike brands or even the larger distributors. But going back to the original point of refining that, it is having an idea, and a good idea is part of it, implementing that idea is part of it, and every single move that you make afterwards. Your relationships you build, the employees you can attract. That was a big difference, even with the people that were working with me. My other businesses, I knew, like robotics. I started the robotics business because I needed robots for my machines. And at that time, robots were really expensive, about $100,000 for a basic robot. Now that price has come down to maybe $30,000, but it became price prohibitive to automate. So making it myself worked, and I really understood what I needed and how to make it work. Some people start businesses that, they see an idea, but they really don't know that world. And so anytime I see that, I'm like, go with something that you have a background that you can give an edge, and your ability set allows you to have that edge. But like I remember when I was doing robotics, it was really, really hard for me to find people that also knew things about robotics in Asheville, North Carolina, particularly. Mm-hmm. It would have been a lot easier if I probably had started this business in, Silicon Valley or something like that. I would have also been competing with a lot higher wages with the other tech companies, so that would have been a problem. But Industry 9, man, what a perfect business for Asheville, North Carolina. Tons of people from all over the country love Asheville, want to ride bikes in Asheville, but there's not a lot of really great jobs. So you start a bicycle manufacturing company in an area that has great riding. I was able to bring in people from all over the country that were really talented people that were just looking for an excuse to move to Asheville. And so then they brought that passion to help it work too. So, that's huge. Every step of the way, as long as you have that passion, then you have the energy and the emotional desire to keep pushing through all the hard times. Like your example with commercial versus residential real estate. Okay, if you are doing residential real estate and it's so emotional because you're tied into these families, and I've got a couple of realtor buddies myself, and so you make an offer and the other real estate agent outcompetes you, or the other buyer outcompetes you, and the buyers you're working with are really upset with you, like, why didn't you, get in that one more offer? And, that really, really bothers them. And it's just like, I can't stand that. It just hurts their heart. Well, you're not going to make it. If it hurts your heart, you're not going to make it. Conversely, if that just hurts your heart a little bit, but that buyer that's like, oh, I found my dream house, and that just lights you up. I have a buddy that's exactly like that, and it just means so much to him to help these people find their dream. Every disappointment that he has is overwhelmed by that positive feeling that he gets from that. So he's going to do really well. He does do really well. But if I had known him, 20 years ago when he started, I'd have been like, oh, yeah, you're going to totally make it. Yeah. So, those are some of the bits of magic, I guess.
I love that.
I think, with you guys and the podcast, obviously podcasts are a big thing these days. And I'm sure there's thousands of people trying to, start a podcast that nobody really wants to tune in. But, you guys bring that passion and have some interesting interviews, and I hope to be one of them. And, it makes it much more likely to pull it off, of course.
And we're trying to, I think what you're speaking to, and I know Sarah has a question, is like these kind of, I always refer to like Venn diagrams. It's just like when you can find those kind of overlaps that that's where the magic happens. It's where the concentric circles kind of connect. And so to your point, we're hoping that there are a lot of business podcasts. There are a lot of podcasts with founders. We're hoping that the circle of founders, Asheville, and hopefully hosts that don't suck, knock on wood, is like a decent enough soup that people enjoy to eat. I don't know. God damn, I lost my... Pizza. We're making pizza and the dough and the red sauce. Yeah. Alas, but I hope here's to that being true. It does seem like you've hit a perfect kind of Venn diagram right now. Sarah, what were you about to ask? You had a question.
I'm curious to go back to the first sale that you made with Industry 9, and how did you go about thinking about finding those people that would buy your products?
Magazine the internet 14 years ago was a different place.
Well timed though for us. How we started during the prototyping, started working with some shops, and then every shop has a handful of really, really good riders, and so we'd make prototypes, and these guys were excited to ride, mainly because it was made by a local company, and so they started riding it, and then, we refined the product as they were riding it, and then it's out on the trail, and we had a huge advantage. I like to think the main reason I was successful was because I made a wheel that functioned better than every other wheel. And I believe that to the root of my heart. But I also made them with all these pretty colors and really fancy, shiny colors as well. And so when those first bikes were riding around, like at Bent Creek, other people saw them, and, those colors caught their eye. And so then they started talking to the rider that was there, actually, engineering buddy of mine. I remember I became friends with him because he saw one of those wheels, and then he was like, who's doing this? And then he was interested and even helped me do some of the original engineering calculations. And so that was real organic because it was kind of an exciting looking product. But then when people would dig in deeper, they were like, oh, wow, it's really... really has a functional advantage. So then these bike shop people that two different guys that either worked in a bike shop or owned a bike shop were so excited about it that they came to work for me in the very early years to help it work. And so then they put the first set of wheels in, I think it was actually Liberty Bike Shops here in town, and because they had that contact. And so that got us going a little bit in the local market. And then we did a trade show. It's called Interbike. It's not even in existence now, but it's the biggest bike show in North America anyway. And we had on display these really beautiful multicolored wheels, and people were taking pictures of them like crazy and posting them on the forums and the bulletin boards, or whatever the main source days was. Wasn't Facebook or Instagram, but you can bet those pictures were going all over the place. And so that, gave us a good ability to grow right away. Not fast, not super fast, but it was definitely went from 0 to 60. It felt way different than any of my other businesses. There was a real passion. I always like to tell the story. I was at the early days, the robotics business was getting wind under it, and it was doing fairly well. And the bicycle wheel business, Industry 9, was doing really well. And I would, have a phone call from an Industry 9 customer that was just gushing how much they loved the wheels and how it improved their riding and stuff like that. And then I'd hang up the phone and get a call from a robotics customer, and they would threaten to sue me for $5,000 per day if I didn't get the robot system running so they could fire 20 people. And when I finally made the life realization that I needed to focus and shut a company down so I could focus, it was real easy to make the choice of Industry 9. But I also saw that growth coming in, and the internet was huge for that because, it spread it around. But now still, people didn't know I would stay in business. I had to fight against people saying, oh, you're going to spend $1,000 for a set of wheels because it's pink. And it's like, no, that's not the case. But that was even nice because the people that had bought the initial wheels came to our defense. We didn't even have to make the argument. Somebody would make a negative comment like that, and then, I'd have 10 people defending me and saying, no, this is really a better functioning wheel. It's not just about the color.
And just for as close as you can without seeing it, right? So we're a podcast, not yet video podcast. But one of the ways that I remember you explaining part of what makes your wheel different, it has to do with, is it take up, or is that the right term? It's how quickly force to the pedal affects the tire's rotation.
Yeah, I mean, we would call it engagement. Speed. But yeah, when we were starting, most of the bicycle hubs had what we call 20-degree engagement time. So, when you quit pedaling and it's coasting, it's called freewheel. And you have your maximum strength when your feet are applying force to the pedal at, if you looked at a clock, at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. When you're at 6 and 12, you're at your weak point. So if you lose 20 degrees, you're going to an obstacle and you're timing like pulsing a pedal stroke over like a log or a rock or something like that. If you set your feet at that power point and then you surge into it, and if you lose 20 degrees and it's random, it could be a loss of 1 degree, it could be a loss of 20 degrees. Your timing isn't right, and you lose some of your strength. And so by having a very, very fast engagement time, our current hubs are a half a degree. Now it just feels like anytime you want to time an energy force pulse to your pedals, you know exactly when it's going to happen, and so you're able to ride technical features a lot better.
Wow. Okay, so I think I'm tracking with you. So if I were to try and make sense of it on a clock, you're talking about seconds versus like 12 minutes of clock being eaten up on a pedal.
Yeah, well, the best way to look at it is think about your feet horizontally, and that's what I'm saying at 3 and 9 versus vertically at 12 and 6.
And the second the pedal moves at all, you're increasing the force on the tires. You're going faster.
Yeah, and I guess the way to look at it would be, I'm trying to give think of another example for someone that maybe not is a cyclist that would make sense, but I don't know, like if you were using your arms to lift something and you had it close to your body, it's a lot easier to lift than if you tried to lift it, when it's way out. And that's the same thing with your pedaling. When your feet are horizontal, you're pressing down with your muscles and your weight allow that gravity to push the pedal down. But when it's in its vertical position, you're just kind of scraping with these side muscles. And so if you looked at a force curve of your pedal and you saw how much force was being applied to a pedal in a circular pedal stroke, you would notice that when your leading pedal and your rear pedal were at 3 and 9, you have more force being applied to the pedal than when your pedal is at 6 and 12. So that makes sense?
Yeah. So and 20% to a half a or 20 degrees to a half a degree.
Yeah, so you wouldn't consider it 20%. So it's 20 degrees out of 360 degrees. Okay. So a third of that, basically. But yeah,
Where did you get the ideas for the colors? Like, how did that come about?
Well, actually, this guy, John Kiffmeyer, that helped me do the initial prototypes, he was a machinist here when we started. And when we launched the business, it started out when we made these aluminum spokes. You're able to anodize them the different colors. So because they were able to be done in different colors, he suggested, let's offer them in all these different colors. Now, being a manufacturer and running many businesses myself, that is a horrible decision from inventory management. If you looked at all those shelves,
a lot of shelves
up there is, hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory of different colored hub shells. And if you just offered black, for instance, you wouldn't have nearly as much money tied up. So that makes the business very difficult to run. And then when you're financially to run, but then also from a system standpoint, it makes it very, very difficult because of the customizations, and you have to have special computer software. And I wrote my initial stuff to be able to do that. And if I hadn't been in computer science and I had not had the ability when I was bootstrapping and I didn't have the money to buy these $50,000, $100,000 a year software systems, that wouldn't have worked either. But he saw the marketing benefit of that and how that got everybody excited. So in all honesty, I probably wouldn't have chosen to do so many colors initially. Actually, he brought in the idea to fade the spokes. So not only did we have 10 different colors of spokes, but you could combine like a red to blue fade, which was insanely difficult to do and insanely expensive to do. It was kind of neat when you were low volume, but then it became really, really hard to manage. So we went to 10 colors, which nobody else is doing that. I mean, honestly, I don't know of anybody that offers the ability to customize our product like we do in all kinds of industries. Yeah. And that's difficult stuff to do. But he had the vision that would, give us note, so the extra cost that went into making that work, you could kind of write off as a marketing expense. And that helped us a lot. So, but that was a tough decision to make because it really did have some very difficult reverberations. So,
honestly, can't imagine in the classic business metaphor I'm thinking of is like the Apple iPhone headphones at the very beginning, and how that was such a pattern break in headphones that people wanted that. I could imagine being out on mountains doing riding bikes and just noticing that, hey, those wheels aren't black and wheels are black, so what is going on here? Having an effect similar to teenage kids 10 years ago really wanting white headphones and getting the coolest, newest phone. You've mentioned now a number of times the skill set of computer programming and the complexity of running a manufacturing facility. There's a couple buzzwords that I know, and I know less. I can't go deep on these, but like lean manufacturing or processes like that. Have you done any like continuing education to think about how to run factories and systems in general that have informed you that we could link people to if they're thinking about production?
Well, sure. And various people that are employed here, definitely do continuing education. Obviously just working with major manufacturers around the world, they require certain certifications. And so, yeah, you're constantly thinking about new ways of doing things, stuff like that. The best way I would put it, though, is it's kind of common sense to a certain degree. If that's the way your mind works and that's what you're immersed in, as technology increases, you can do more things. I actually met with this manufacturer from the Knoxville area yesterday, and he was talking about his manufacturing facility, and just in time is one of the buzzwords, and the kind of the idea about it is maybe you could get an order for an item, and you could just make one of them, and you're not inventorying it, or you're not taken a long time to make it. You have these systems set up, and he has these machining cells that he's invested like $3 million in per cell to be able to just make one part at a time. For what he's doing, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. For the bicycle hubs, we make a lot of different kinds of hubs, but still it makes much more sense for us to do production runs. But that depends on how fast the machines can be set up. With the computerized machinery and standardized tooling, you can make much shorter runs, and then you put less parts in inventory waiting to sell through. And that makes a big difference in terms of if you have too many parts in inventory, it reduces your ability and or desire to create new product because you have to use up your inventory. Mm-hmm. But if you're making it one at a time and you're able to do that inexpensively, that's great. 10 years ago, a part that you could maybe make, well, it's not that the technology has gotten that much better in the past 10 years, but if you've developed systems over that 10-year period that allows you to make a part from zero to nothing in just a couple of minutes, and it used to take you hours to get those machines set up, then it's obviously better to do it faster. And, so that's continuous improvement and improving your processes and the way you do things. So, but, everybody names that kind of thinking. It categorizes that kind of thinking. I would prefer to just say I walk in the morning and look around and try to have an open mind and make things better in any way possible. And part of it also is the human toll. There's certain decisions that you refrain from making that might make save money or make something more efficiently, but it drives down the enthusiasm of your people, and then you lose something there. So it's a whole system and multidimensional. So you just stay sharp and figure out what you need to do.
I'm curious to know what your day-to-day life is like. Like, you come in here and let's start from what do you do when you wake up to the end of the day?
Well, 9 times out of 10, I wake up and some issue of the manufacturing or this business or sales or whatever, might enter your mind and you solve that problem. I have, at this point in my life, if you went back 10 years ago, I'd say I did a multitude of things, whether it was going to a show or just making sure a machine ran or setting up a machine. But as I've developed a better and better and more capable workforce, I've been able to focus my time. And so the past couple of years has been predominantly spent on design and new ideas. For product, but also designs and new ideas for improving the manufacturing process. So that's predominantly, the time I spent. But, different times you have different emergencies, issues, and, employees, finding new employees, stuff like that, at times I'll need to spend my time doing. And I might come down here and troubleshoot a broken machine or a process that isn't working quite right and figure out how to dial it in. And my life's fairly varied, dealing with customer relations, developing friendships, and then, also, honestly, I'm really, really lucky because riding my bike and riding it a lot also helps the business. If you're a very strong rider, it gives you credibility that what you make is good. So,
yeah. And you've told us, I have a lot of energy and, always have been just a hard worker. I'm wondering, is there something that, I don't know, your diet, your exercise routine that you think has contributed to your energy level, or is it just that's the way I'm wired?
I mean, it's probably mostly the way I'm wired, but, it's training too. I like to say, I was telling you about my night ride last night and getting to bed at about 3:30, riding about 1:30. A lot of people would not want to do that just because it's like, that's insane. Before I did that, I spent till 2 a.m. here building robots. So now you speak of diet. I have this picture. I'm 51 years old today, I have this picture when I was 34 that I looked like I was about to die. The reason, businesses were failing, difficult marriage, young kids, sleeplessness. But I was also working till 2 a.m., ordering pizza to keep working and, getting the machinery done or the robotics done or whatever. And so I was not exercising. I was not on a bike. I was kayaking a little bit, but I would say that was a horrible lifestyle, but I still had tons of energy. And now I've just taken that energy and I exercise an intense amount, have a great diet most of the time, but I also have way too much fun. So, I won't go too far in how great my diet is. And, but mainly, I've always just wanted to go hard. I wake up in the morning and I just go hard, and that creates energy to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You're trained.
Yeah. There's momentum in just moving fast, right? It just keeps things moving. Wow. Cool. I had a question and I've since lost it, but I believe that the way that I was going to ask, was in effect, you're like, I wake up and there's some sort of business emergency. And I'm just wondering conceptually, and you don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but like what types of things, if anything, are keeping you up at night about the business? Is it, a competitor might try and get, come up with your idea, Willy Wonka style? Or is it, let's say, payroll, what are there problems that at this stage in your life are different than the problems when you were just getting started? My guess is yes. And what do they look like today, 14 years into the business? Because it's not find customers. Like we walk around town, we said we were going I-9, and everyone seems to know that they make the best, like they're the best. So it's a different problem today, I imagine. What might that problem be?
Okay, so I'll put out, I've never been too much of a worrier. Mm-hmm. I've had lots of difficult times and a lot of problems to solve. I've always considered worry doesn't get you anywhere, but certainly complacency will kill you. Mm-hmm. And just to what you spoke of, having finally built a business that people really think highly of, and that a lot of people do think we make the best stuff out there, is really, really great. And I think personally what I guard against the most is keeping that edge. Okay, so when you look at it from a business standpoint, everybody thinks of it complexly. But the truth of the matter is, let's take fitness. You realize that if tomorrow you quit hitting the gym and doing nothing except sitting at your desk all day long, we all know you are going to gain weight and you're going to get out of shape. You're not going to look as good. I mean, a myriad of things happen, right? Yeah. Obviously. I see it particularly with people that finally become successful. They're in their 50s. They have, they've gotten this respect. And then it's really easy to just enjoy that. I can go to a bike event in, Moab, Utah or something like that. And I'm sure to have somebody that knows Industry 9, a handful of friends that are there, they're excited about riding with me, so like I can just go out to Moab and kind of be a big deal and ride bikes and have a blast. And what that means is you quit innovating, you quit trying to improve, and sooner or later somebody is going to get you. Somebody's going to create a better product, or you're going to allow your facility, your manufacturing, your people, they're going to lose their edge. They see the owner not working as hard. Of course, they don't put as much energy into it. I don't know how many people appreciate but if you if you look at all those machines, we've got more than 100 CNC machines. We have people building wheels. We have people assembling hubs. We have parts that are going, to heat treating. Like all these things are processes that have to stay in control to make sure good product gets out the door. I would say that I have somewhere around 500,000 variables that could go wrong every single day, and only one of them has to go wrong. And you put bad product out in the field, and that might fail, and then your reputation is diminished, and your customers are unhappy, and then you don't have a business anymore. So, you have to be diligent. But just like going out on a run or a bicycle ride to keep yourself in physical shape, it's not like you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to make sure to get on a bike. I'm so worried, I'll get out of shape. No, it's just what you do, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the way I do, handle the business. And so it is always innovate and always try to improve your processes and always try to conceptualize the things that could go wrong, so you build a system that makes it increasingly less likely that anything could go wrong. It's not a worry. It's no different than exercising. Yeah. So
that's a great answer.
I love that, and because also in many ways I think people think, oh, when I get to this point, I'll finally be happy in my life, or I'll finally have done the thing that I wanted to do. And it's like, well, no, it's actually loving the process of what it is that you're doing along the way. And so by constantly innovating, you're keeping your brain kind of stimulated and interested in what it is. I'm curious to know, looking back at the big picture of the business, what milestones or key turning points were there that you can kind of identify from a big picture scale?
Okay, so the biggest turning point, the first giant turning point in my life was, I think I was about 28 years old, and it's kind of a strange thing to be talking about from a business perspective, but workaholic, driven though, enjoying it. Don't get me wrong, I was behind cold concrete walls for way too many hours. My personal life suffered as a result of it. Relationships suffered as a result of it. But I was still enjoying what I was doing and loving it. But I was having business failures. I was having a large degree of difficulty, and I was also becoming less physically healthy. So I literally, let me make a little side note. When I was on this cliff face last night riding bikes at midnight with this really cool group of friends that are really tough and able to do these amazing rides, I almost say it every night ride. I said, 51 years old, if I could have imagined my life, my wildest dream, what would I be doing at 51 years old? No way would have I predicted that I would be doing this. No way I thought that I would be this, physically strong and hanging out with people doing, this kind of stuff. And what got me there, and I can't even believe this was me, but if I go back at 28 years old, I'm noticing I'm going out of shape. I'm living in this neighborhood. So what does everybody do when they're like, oh, I need to get in shape? Let's start jogging around the neighborhood. So I start jogging, and running like a half a mile just killed me. My shins hurt. I was worn out. A couple years ago, I did a 30-mile trail race, it's easy now. It's not easy, but, it's easy to do. And I couldn't run a block. And so I live next to this little lake. And I saw these older people canoeing, just leisurely canoeing around the lake. And I was like, maybe that's what I could do to get a little bit more shape. So I bought a little lake kayak. And I remember when I bought it, I told everybody, I was like, it's not like I'm going to get into this crazy whitewater stuff. I'm just going to paddle, and I'm going to be able to sit. Can I use curse words in this? I'm going to sit on my ass and paddle, and at least I can get some exercise and maybe build up as far as that's concerned. So I hit my little local lake, and I do that for a few weeks, and then I kind of get bored of it a little bit. So I ask around, is there any gentle rivers that, would offer some cool scenery just, for a change of pace. No white water, do it. And it was the luckiest day of my life because I went to this river, the Lower Green actually, that one of my buddies suggested that I do. And I just didn't pay attention that rain allowed river levels to come up. I mean, I'd seen floods, like big rains, but like regular rains bringing river levels up. I had no thought process of this. So I go to this river. It rained fairly hard Friday night. I go to the river Saturday morning, and it's cooking. But again, all I'd been told is a nice, gentle river, and I didn't think it'd be any problem. So I put on this river, and wow, it was like this adrenaline rush from hell. And I got off that river, and it was like my senses had just been woken up, and I was like, I've got to do this, and I've got a whitewater kayak. So I immediately buy a whitewater kayak, and I start whitewater kayaking, which, gave me this real passionate thing to do. It still took me probably 10 years of transition to really get my life where it needed to be. But kayaking started that. And that was an incredibly lucky day because if it hadn't rained, I wouldn't have taken that. So fast forward a couple years later, I'm getting into, I become a fairly good kayaker doing class 4 stuff anyway. And my daughter is born, and when you kayak, you know a lot of people that die every year, unfortunately. And so I wanted to be a good father. I also didn't want her to be an orphan. So that's when I started cycling. And it was really, honestly, it was just a trailer on the back of an old mountain bike or a basic mountain bike that I rode around for some fitness and to take my kids through the woods and stuff like that, and my second kid. And then that was what got me started thinking about the ideas for improving the hub, which then allowed me to meet these really good cyclists and then start riding with them in town because I was creating this product. And that series of events was the biggest life changer I could possibly imagine. And that's what taught me to really mix this really intense passion, to get that really intense passion and meld it into your business. So that was those two events were predominantly the one kayaking event was probably the biggie.
Wow.
The second thing that was a real key change in my life, and that was just kind of unique to the person I was. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people experience this, but having an overactive brain, too much energy, and then a machine shop that I could create any idea was just too powerful. It was too much power for somebody that didn't have enough sense. And I felt for some reason, some delusion of being superhuman in terms of businesses, I thought I could run 5-6 businesses. And that is a foolish thing to think. And I woke up finally and realized I needed to focus. And even though I did a lot of things, I'm proud of all the things I've done, you still have to focus. Mm-hmm. And so making that realization, which then created probably one of the most heartbreaking, or probably two of the most heartbreaking periods of two years that were the most heartbreaking of my life, were shutting down these other businesses, because I also poured my heart and soul into all these businesses. And it was, it was worse than a divorce. It was giving up on what you'd worked so hard to do was hard, but it also made, Industry 9 thrive.
So in that transition period, I'm wondering, we walk around the space and there are people, and there's people working on all sorts of stuff. I'm trying not to make assumptions, but let's just say, as you played with all of these, or started all of these business ideas, and began executing them, were the employees, could they flow across the projects? Like do the CNC machines work against all of them? And so were people being employed by 6 different businesses at the time, or were they all kind of working through Turnamics? And then where are you at today on employees? Because the number seems really high when we walk around.
I mean, we're about 90 now. Each company had its own employees, but the machine shop always had the biggest amount of employees. And so there was, generally speaking, there was at least one of those employees that would help or would be key to transition into those new businesses. So there was that, but they would maybe initially in some of the prototypes, because they were machinists, we would actually make the parts in the machine shop for the development, and then a lot of those products we would install in the machine shop, like the robots. We put the first robot on our machines here, and gain the experience for that automation work. And then that employee, while you were developing it in and out, they would work in the machine shop. But then as soon as the business kind of got rolling, that person would transition to the new place.
That's crazy.
And then you just hire new people when you needed to, or certain skill sets when you needed to. So maybe the best way to describe the machine shop was it was an incubator. So.
Yeah, I think that's how my mind was seeing it. That's a great word for it. 90 employees sounds absolutely bananas to me. I imagine you've always had employees your mother was the first employee in your dad's business. Have you been around this 90 number for a while? Does it feel normal? Is this like a high growth time for you? How many employees do you see in 2020 when we're going to start transitioning towards the end of the conversation? But like, I have to imagine at 90 employees, you're one of the larger employers around Asheville that's not a hotel or the hospital. Is that sound? I mean, I have no idea. This seems so big.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. Dwarfed by the hospital. Yeah. There's a couple other manufacturing facilities that have quite a few people.
Okay.
But I mean, still not that many. I mean, I imagine we're kind of up there, but there's a lot of businesses with a lot more than 90 employees, but there's still not many. So.
Yeah. And what I mean, I've heard that there's an inflection point at around 50 where like somehow or another by law you need HR or you need a finance department. I'm just wondering, like, running a business with 10 people versus 100, what kind of differences happen? You have managers that actually manage teams. You have middle managers. I don't know. But what's it like with a team of 90 to 100?
Well, again, I could probably write a book on all that. You do see it at different points. Now, my main experience, you grow up in something, you become comfortable with it. I think when I was in, my dad's business started with one employee, and then when I was in college, I think we were about 40, if I remember correctly. And then when I got right out of college, because of the really rapid growth with RockShox, we had a year where we basically doubled in size.
Wow.
And that was, buying a lot of machinery, $500,000, $1 million worth of new equipment. And then, I think that first year, and it was hell, but, had to go from 40 to 80 people. Right now we have 90, but it's about 45 in the machine shop and about 45 up at Industry 9. And I would say that I have a personal relationship with all 90. Some very tight personal relationships, some, a little bit more surface. I mean, I certainly know everybody's name, and I certainly, know a little bit about their life at very least. When you get much over 90, and I have probably at one point, I probably employed about 110 with the various companies running, and you start losing some of that personal connection. I love 90 employees. It's got its fair share of difficulty, and when I had only 10 at Industry 9, there was something nice about that too, but I'm really used to that number. So I really like that number. And I know that as we grow, and honestly, when you have the ability to grow, you better grow, or again, somebody's going to take your place. So I know that I will have transition. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm at 150 one day soon. And that's going to be a whole new set of realities that I'm probably not aware of exactly all the nuances. it's interesting in the microscopic details of it all, but it is nice to have a personal relationship with the people that you work with, and have that community. And you probably, we'll probably, there'll be a group of people that, I'm sure when you're at 500, you just can't know everybody's name. You just
there's something about a tribe size. They say at around 150. The network effect kind of changes.
Yeah. But I've seen in my book, I'd say, the dynamic with, 10 changes quite a bit, maybe 30 changes again, and then 90, 100 is probably another one. And then, I'm going to get to see the other ones. You can read a little bit about it. You can learn a little bit about it, but it's until you actually experience it, it's going to be a little bit of a surprise. So.
Can't imagine.
Do you have any advice for managing people?
You can manage people in a lot of different ways. You can be a complete asshole and drive them like their numbers, and and a lot of corporations do that. They're a procedure and a number, and you can replace them in and out. And, who knows? There's a lot of major corporations that works really well. And, but for what we, for my express goal of this company is to make our lives better, not necessarily to maximize profitability, but let's rest assured, if you're not healthily profitable, you're going to fail, and that doesn't do anybody any favors. So, money is a big piece of it. Profitability is a big piece of it, but I always like one of my favorite things that I said to somebody, or caused me to think momentarily and say this, was somebody once asked me if I had an employee handbook. And I was like, yes, but I view it as irrelevant because everybody, it's cold and impersonal to even call it a handbook. If you have a friend, you don't say, oh, here's my handbook of how I interact with friend A, No, he's your friend. You know who he or she is. And so, like, everybody has their nuances. Everybody has their fears, their positives, their strengths, their weaknesses. Understanding that, and working that interpersonal symphony to create beautiful music. Let's say, it's a little flowery, but I mean it's kind of true.
Yeah,
is kind of how I look at it.
Heard.
So.
So then we're at the end here, and there's a couple questions that we like to ask everyone. A question for you is, if we had a magic wand, or if our audience had a magic wand, what might you ask for? And it can be anything.
Like a genie in the bottle,
Exactly.
Grant me a wish?
Yes.
Absolutely nothing. I can't believe my life is as good as it is.
Oh, man.
Would have never dreamed I could have been able to say that. But today I can probably say that.
Cool.
We never had anyone say that before.
No, I love that for so many reasons. So here.
Yeah. So I'd love to know, you've been here a long time, all your life, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of things do you like doing in Asheville, from restaurants to
I guess
trails?
Not bike riding, but maybe bike riding.
But yeah.
Well, one of the things that makes my life really good is that I finally found the perfect woman for me. So we do a lot of fun things. If you would look at it from a biking perspective, we bought this house that has got an excellent opportunity to commute, some trails, some back roads to be able to commute to downtown. And, so oftentimes we'll ride our bike downtown, get dinner, maybe hit a couple bars, see some music, take a little bypass up a mountain and, see, the stars or the moon or something like that, and head back home. And that's probably one of the favorite things we do. And then get out in the weekend, and we do a decent amount of paddling and stuff like that as well. But then I've got a big old group of friends that do some really amazing things. You guys ought to join us this summer, but we put on these we call them river rave parties. I have like these 3 giant sups, and a lot of the employees are real into it. And we build a dance floor and a sound system. When my buddy built the sound system, Justin Mitchell built this amazing waterproof sound system, and he's a DJ himself.
Oh, wow.
And we put together these 70-person flotillas where we're blasting music and dancing, going down the river. So that's a ton of fun. I'll tow a trailer and put a speaker on the back of it and get a big group of people, and we will just, I call it bike party through town, and we'll just hit bars and ride around, blasting music, go up mountains, and just have a blast as far as that's concerned. So, it's a pretty rich life as far as that's concerned. So those are some of the favorite things that I do.
So if you see a loud group of cyclists in town, look out for Clint.
Yeah, chances are I'll be in that group, probably towing the trailer.
That's so fun. Wow. Okay. We will look forward to those invites. We'll join. We'll rent bikes, or at least on the paddle boards.
Well, I got one you can borrow.
Perfect. Here's a question. When you think of so I'm going to give you 2 words, word association. What comes to mind? Asheville and the word community.
What comes to mind when I hear those 2 words? I mean, for me personally, like every town has little tight-knit groups of people that are defined by something that they do. Mine is certainly mostly the cycling community, and it's a tight-knit community in town. A lot of us know each other. A lot of us ride together and stuff like that. So when I think of that, I think of my bike friends. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I go much deeper than that.
Cool. Yeah, and then just outside in mountain biking and road biking, are they different communities? Are they like rival bike gangs, or do they kind of do both? Do most people do both?
A lot of people do both. A lot of people are, stringent one way or the other. I mean, there's a small group of people that, mountain bikers might be like, oh my gosh, let me pull out my heart rate monitor and go on a road ride, and they make a little fun of that. And then, a road cyclist might say, oh, let me go out in the woods and smoke a joint and pedal around at 2 miles per hour, making fun of that a little bit. But all in all, everybody is, that's kind of the joke, I would say, for the most part. There's a lot of people that do both. And though there's definitely communities of people that specialize in different avenues, even the type of mountain bike riding that you do, I would say overall everybody is, knows each other. Mm-hmm. A lot of people know each other and like and respect each other.
Yeah, it seems that way. You made me think of one of my favorite YouTube channels, which is called Casually Explained, and he does a casually explained, like, someone who knows how to ride a bike, someone who is a commuter, commutes to work on a bike, and then someone who's a road biker, and how they're different and the nuances between the differences. Yeah. So we will share that, A, with you, and then B, in the show notes. Sarah, any other questions? Because we're about at time and we want to respect your time.
No, just if our audience would like to find more about you or Industry 9 on the internet, where can they find you?
Well, our website's industry9.com, spelled out. So, that's the best way. Or, check us out on
Instagram and YouTube,
Facebook, mm-hmm. YouTube. We got videos, and you can definitely learn. But also, we do tours on I think it's Monday and Friday. I forgot exactly the times, but we always invite people to come by and take a tour. And so, I oftentimes give them myself, and I love showing everybody the processes. And like I said, we're a wide open door. We don't try to hide our trade secrets. We share.
It's like good luck when you see this face. That would be my thought, is that you're just saying good luck trying to pull this off. This is the scale in this place is absolutely amazing. We thank you for the hospitality, showing us around, and taking the time to talk with us and share some of your stories. So,
thank you for your time.
Of course. And that was episode 46 with Clint Spiegel. Oh my goodness, I feel like that was a MBA course in business operation, in leadership theory, in all sorts of very practical business advice.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to gain from this episode. The one thing that I wish that I could steal from Clint is his energy levels. Oh. Incredible, man.
Incredible. I mean, it was not possible to know that he was up 1:30 the night before, riding mountain bikes, and got home at 3:00. He was full steam, and I loved how he said, I wake up and I go hard. I think that's my new motto. I think that maybe we make t-shirts that say, we just like making it in Asheville, we wake up and go hard. And and so if you were inspired like I was by this episode and are interested in getting started mountain biking, or you already mountain bike and you have like questions or more things to do, there's a little bit of a bonus question at the end of this
bonus
audio
soundbite
at the end of this episode, where we ask Clint, how would you get started?
Yeah. Great. And also, if you want to learn more about anything we mentioned in the episode, you want to read about Clint, because I know some people are, visual learners more than audio learners. We have show notes on makingitinasheville.com/046. So you can connect with Clint there and learn more about his business as well.
And if you liked this episode, we will ask you, please and thank you, to write a review or leave a 5-star kind of review making it in Asheville on Apple Podcasts. That is the place to do it. It makes a world of difference. We're finally, it's almost been a year, but we're finally starting to hear that this podcast is showing up when people search for podcasts, and that is a result of the star reviews and the written reviews that happen on Apple Podcasts. So thank you in advance for taking the moment to do that for Clint and for all of our guests.
And if you want to stay connected with us, learn about new episodes, upcoming events, all the latest news from Making It in Asheville, we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter as well. So you can do that at makingitinasheville.com/subscribe. We list all the ways there that you can stay connected to us and hear about upcoming news and events.
And events that you would hear about, for example, are our monthly Monday Maker Mixers. Our next one, the one that will conclude March, and really this season of episodes, is about to get announced to our email list. And so if you are interested in participating in one of our little community events, the best place to be first in line to hear about it is on that email list, which is found at makingitinasheville.com/subscribe.
And just a reminder that this podcast is brought to you by our very own marketing agency called Making It Creative. We help small businesses in Asheville with their marketing, their messaging, communicating to their customers in more meaningful ways, all sorts of different marketing activities.
Yeah, and it's different for every client. And to be clear, that's probably why we kind of hedge on what it actually shows up as, because the biggest part of what we attempt to do is understand what the largest levers are going to be for a prospective client, and attempt to pull on those levers to make a meaningful difference in their business. And so if you're interested in reading a little bit more about that, or asking more about that, the place to go is makingitcreative.com.
Fantastic. And finally, if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, you can nominate them at makingitinasheville.com/podcast. You can also come to our Monday Maker Mixer events, say hello, get to know us. We'd love to meet you and hear what you're up to.
Episode 46. So here's my thing, right? So we've talked to some big businesses, some big brands, and been in some big spaces. I can't get over 70,000 square feet. I can't get over 90 total employees. We're just starting to think about contracting work and managing that. And the idea of bringing on a full-time human is crazy. This episode I will come back to a lot. I can't. It's the scale of what's going on in Industry 9 is, if only as a thought activity, something that I want to spend more time with to kind of normalize it, on the thought that maybe one day we'll have 2 employees.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. And his sort of advice too on managing people was, I thought, super wise.
Yeah. So, 46 episodes in, 47's coming up. And there's still so many new things to hear and to learn, and I am excited for what lies ahead. Season 4 is looking to be quite fun. Season 3 will end with a lot of excitement, I think, and I'm excited for it. So without further ado, that was the end of episode 46. Sarah, we did it. High five. Cool. So, what is a 101 if you have friends, cousins in town, they aren't bike riders yet? What's what is step one? Is it go rent a bike? Is it what mountain, what trail? How would someone get started riding bikes in Asheville?
Well, if you know me, you just probably borrow a bike from me. Some of the bike shops rent bikes, or they'll even demo some that they could potentially sell. And go out to Bent Creek, do a few loops. Ideally, get with somebody that knows some trails so they can show you around, and slowly but surely you get good.
Cool. How when I think about bike riding in Bent Creek, we walked Bent Creek once, and we only saw one person on a bike. I have a feeling we weren't in the Bent Creek that everyone talks about because that's come up as the bike place to go. What all is going on in Bent Creek? Because that's what we hear when we hear mountain biking and trails.
Well, I mean, I'll personally rarely go to Bent Creek because it's crowded, and so I am surprised that you didn't see anybody. But I suppose there's some hiking only trails in Bent Creek. Most of them are biking trails. So around here, you'll see trails designated between horses, bikes, and hiking. So everything you can hike. Maybe 25% of the trails you can bike, but Bent Creek is heavily bike legal. So most of the trails in Bent Creek are bike legal, but also Bent Creek has some of the easier terrain and some fairly well-marked trails. So almost everybody starts in Bent Creek, but soon they'll graduate to a little bit more remote, and then the trails get rockier and steeper, or more rooty, or more stream crossings, stuff that you need more skill to be able to do it.
Cool.
But Bent Creek's a place to start for sure.